And now we welcome you back to the concluding segment of the concluding show, our year-end edition 2018, as we welcome in our regular contributor, constitutional lawyer, and LibertyNation.com legal affairs editor, Scott Cosenza. Hello, Scott.
Saving the best for last, Tim. I appreciate it very much.
Something like that. Yeah, something like that. Now, Scott's going to go over what he considers the 5 most significant but overlooked stories affecting individual liberty in 2018. So, Scott, let's jump right in. And you put at the head of your list something that I wouldn't, but it is curious because there's 2 different angles on it. And it is the American Civil Liberties Union, ACLU, abandoning free speech. Why?
Why did they do it, or why is it
important? Why is it at the top of your list?
Okay. It's at the top of my list, Tim, because I think that the First Amendment is what guarantees our freedom of speech, and it's first for a reason. Without the freedom to think or to speak freely, we don't have the ability to think freely. That's why those who wish to who control our thinking want to control our speech. And this really abandonment of the cause by the ACLU, I believe it's unfortunately just in the craven pursuit of money, but perhaps I'm wrong about that. Perhaps there are ideological or other reasons why they've done so. But as I see it, they see free speech as a loser in terms of their fundraising. Because in order today, in 2018, to support free speech, what you have to do is you have to support Alex Jones, you have to support Milo Yiannopoulos, you have to support Sargon of Akkad, all these people who are being...
and even Ann Coulter.
And even Ann Coulter, and the people who will pay to have marchies, to defend marchies to march in Skokie will not pay or open up their wallets to help the ACLU defend those people. And so what we've got is when, for instance, Milo was banned at Berkeley, or when Charles Murray was physically assaulted at Middlebury on our college campuses, which is typically the most robust exchange of ideas, where freedom of speech has to be, blossomed and really tended to, I think. They say either very little or nothing, or very far after the fact. There's a tepid statement, that sort of...
But there was a specific thing that they did regarding new rules set out by the Education Secretary, Betsy DeVos, that really got your attention.
Well, we're going to get into that. And just one other thing, which is, so what they did instead of those things, Tim, was they focused on these travel restrictions, as if somehow a Yemenese citizen who wishes to travel to the United States for purposes we don't know about, that's somehow more important for liberty in America, that their travel rights and the extension of those travel rights in a way that the founders never even envisioned is somehow more core
than you and
I having this conversation right now.
Well, to boot, there are no travel rights for people who are not citizens. There's no travel rights for them, but they spoke out, the ACLU specifically, against due process in universities that had been riven by political correctness over a period of years. They didn't just ignore it.
They said there is too much due process. By the way,
there you go.
Now, by and large, men we're talking about here. Anybody can be accused of sexual misconduct on the university settings,
right.
But the cases that we read about that are the most abusive typically involve men who are accused of wrongdoing by females, and who are then subject to, what would we call it, a star chamber, kangaroo court, right. Whatever your favorite pejorative is.
Why don't we just put it this way, that you're basically considered guilty until proven innocent, and yet you don't even get the chance to prove your innocence because you're condemned before any sort of due process. It's
sort of like without the murder or torture, like a Viet Cong sort of thing. Sometimes there's re-education involved. There's all sorts of anti-free speech, anti-liberty components to it. And Betsy DeVos, the hero in our story, in the Trump administration, reversed course of the Obama administration and told these colleges that they are actually expected to give all of their students due process in their judicial proceedings.
I guess we'll conclude this number one story by saying, when it comes to free speech and defending free speech, if not the ACLU, who?
Exactly that.
Number two, the $15 minimum wage. Now, certainly you don't object to a living wage for our American workers, do you, Scott? The Grinch.
Right. That's how you put it. I think that the number of people, so the $15 minimum wage and the major minimum wage growth, that the push for that we've seen these past couple years, I think it is inestimable how much damage this does to the very Americans that they would say it tries to help. Those people who aren't, who are genuine in their. I mean, there are certainly some who understand what they're doing, and what they're doing is, if your labor is not worth $15 an hour, you just don't get to sell it.
Right.
So if you can only generate in excess of $12.50 for the excess labor that you're willing to, that you can provide, you don't get a job. And who does that hurt, Tim? Does it hurt rich white guys with advanced degrees? No, it doesn't hurt them. It hurts the very people these proponents often say they're trying to work hardest for.
That is a product of the minimum wage economy of the Obama years.
If you have lots of full-time employees, what can you do to reduce your costs? If that's the law and the regulation, well, now you reduce them.
Now, number 3 and number 4 on your list are distinct from one another, but I'm going to roll them together because the fact that you have them back-to-back in the top 5 by itself is significant. Number 3 on your list is the New Jersey magazine ban, and I don't mean like Time and Newsweek. I mean gun magazines. And bump stocks is number 4, the abolition thereof.
Well, I would oppose a ban, even though they're bad magazines, on Time and Newsweek as well, on First Amendment grounds. But So we have in New Jersey, they passed a ban on ammunition magazines that hold, I think it's 11 rounds or more, and they created hundreds of thousands, if not 1 million, felons in New Jersey overnight. We've seen the reports come in now that there's not a single instance that the state police can say of somebody actually turning in a magazine. Now, some of those people took them out of state, but with one fell swoop, people who were good citizens, honorable citizens, salt of the earth type people you'd want in your state, and the next day they're felons based on the legislature and a court's interpretation. And I think that is massively anti-liberty. As a former resident, it's sort of my home state. I claim several sort of states, but that's really where I've spent most of my youth. And it's really disappointing. On the same side of the coin, you have the bump stock ban with Trump signing his pen to the ban to include, basically redefine something as a machine gun. A bump stock was never a machine gun. And with this signature, he just basically said, okay, the ATF's now going to consider this a machine gun. So even though a decade ago, they gave all the certifications when people checked and said, okay, we're making sure this is legal, right? So we can own them and we can set up companies to produce them. And they said, yes, there's no money's giving for these bump stocks. There's no, the companies that have to shut down who made them. It's massively anti-liberty. It's exactly like a dictator could do, only it's done in the United States. And I think they're both similar stories because they involve gun and gun parts. And I think they're massive infringements on liberty that really can't stand in a free society where the president can just say, okay, you now own that, you're going to jail.
Last on your list of the top 5 is the Kansas Supreme Court saying cops can search your home without a warrant if they claim it smells like marijuana.
So I thought this story is a news story, Tim, from this week, and I saw it pop up, and I thought one of the stories that I wanted to use for our big important stories of the year is the marijuana story. And there's not really one that totally encapsulates it, but I thought this would be helpful. And so in Kansas, where marijuana is still very much illegal at the state level, we have another instance where the courts are ceding to the drug warriors more and more freedom, okay? Here we had a guy who had marijuana in a safe, in a closet, marijuana was in a closed bag, inside a closed safe, inside a closed closet, inside a closed house. And a cop said they smelled marijuana from the door. Maybe the front door of the house was open. They were able to search according to now what is the legal ruling from the Kansas Supreme Court. They were legally able because one police officer said they smelled marijuana to go into the house and search without a warrant. And I think that it is just showing how we have two tracks now of these places where marijuana is legal and these places where it's not, and the drug war is continuing to ratchet down. The man who was convicted, and I don't know his name in the Kansas case, is going to spend 2 years in prison for less than an ounce of weed. An amount of marijuana that in any of these non-prescription states, they wouldn't, to say that they wouldn't go to prison at all, that it's just a buy your leave, have a nice day, go ahead and, thank you for the state's tax cut. And yet in some states, people are, their lives are ruined over this.
Okay, last question, and you just get to say better, worse, or the same as an answer. How would you define the state of individual liberty in the United States of America on December 31st, 2018, compared to January 1st of this year?
Worse.
Thank you, Scott. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year, Tim.
And Happy New Year to you, and a blessed 2018, the few days that are left, and 2019. A reminder that this program, Liberty Nation Radio Plus, Liberty Nation's own podcast, The Uprising, hosted by me and Scott and Lisa K. Donner, are available to you on demand anytime, anywhere at libertynation.com and from fine podcast providers everywhere. So that is it for this week, but we'll be back at you next week in 2019. Same time, same station. Till then, this is Tim Donner saying stand up for liberty, and we'll see you next time on Liberty Nation Radio.